Right, well Ed, the championship is back. We're back, but the chips are still here in Sharkys, and we've plenty to discuss from weekend one of the Pettitts Senior Hurling Championship. First of all, we had the two matches on Friday night. The first one below one to goal, Oulart against Crossabeg, played out a draw, and then the other game was a draw as well, Fight Harriers in Glenbarntown.
Yeah, two draws. I was at the one in Tegoat. Lovely area down there, lovely part of the county, and it looked like Oulart were going to win that match. They were 5 points up, but I said on commentary that I felt that if Ballymurn moved Oisín Foley into the full forward line, I thought he'd be very dangerous, and he won a free and then got the goal that turned the tie in their favour, and then Billy Dunn of course got a very good point to equalise it. But I went home and watched the Harriers Glyn match. Mark Fanning was outstanding, and Jared Dempsey and Lee Chin. What a performance again by Lee Chin. Every day he's a 9 out of 10 player.
When some people will be analysing games, some will say one team is lucky to win it and the other will say the other team was lucky to win it or lucky to get the draw. What way would you look at that for the two games?
Yeah, no, Ballymurn really impressed me. Their work rate was just off the charts, and they kept trying, and Oulart were not able to pull away, so I'd have to give credit to Crossabeg Ballymurn, and some fine performances as well. Conor Devericks is a really good player for them wing back for the last 7 or 8 years, Peter.
And I know it's different when you're at a match. I wasn't at the Oulart Crossabeg game, but when you look at it, it didn't seem like the most high quality of affairs.
No, I think it's fair to say that the 6 games were pretty low standard, Peter. For the first round of the championship, we've had 4 weeks preparation for it, and I think the standard was pretty poor now in all 6 games. I felt, if you remember last year, we had a game between the Rapparees and the Shelmaliers. That was a great game in Wexford Park, and I just felt that it didn't come up to that level in any of the 6 games.
Yeah, I know it's very early to kind of pinpoint exactly why that might be, and you might never be able to pinpoint exactly why it might be, but would you have any idea why, do you think?
Yeah, well look, as a supporter of hurling, we want to go to Belfield and we want to go to Wexford Park and we want to see Conor MacDonald shooting the lights out. But you put your manager's cap on, if you're Des Myden, you're not wanting to see that, so you're going to put a man marker on him, you're going to play a sweeper. From the matchups I saw, it was pretty obvious that MacDonald and Cathal Dunbar were taking a lot of close marking, and when you're a manager, it's a results driven business. You have to do that,
Yeah, so that leads us on into Saturday's doubleheader in Belfield. So the first game, as you've just mentioned there, you had Naveena against Aldgate, and that was, as we said, Aldgate did a good job, I suppose, at keeping Conor MacDonald under wraps. I suppose Conor is, as you say, any manager that goes out to play goal, you're going to have a plan to curtail Conor because he's so good. And Aldgate did it reasonably well, but there was a couple of sucker punches of goals before half time. Yeah,
I think in about 5 or 6 minutes they got Gorey got 3 goals, and I felt Owen Malloy had a really good game for Gorey, full back. He came out with a lot of balls, and Jack Cullen, a player that really impressed me as well, and I forgot to mention him on Player of the Week. My mistake was Charlie McGuckie, and I thought he was very good wing back.
Yeah, and we see sometimes, like, most people, if they were picking the Gorey team, might pick Jack Cullen wing back and Charlie McGuckie wing forward.
Yeah, well, you see, Peter, Jack Cullen teams, if I'm playing against Gorey, I'll keep my puck out away from Jack Cullen. Now Gorey can dictate where they put their puck out, so he's very good at some of the points he got where on his so-called poor side were exceptional under the stand.
And the second game in that doubleheader then was St Martin's and St Anne's, and I suppose many people would have had St Martin's favourites to win it, considering the run that they had last year without some of their more big names, we'd say. But St Anne's performed as usual.
Yeah, you see, I keep saying it, St Anne's always turn up in the championship, and they just work so hard, and they were without their best player last Saturday. Let's be honest about it, Dermot O'Keefe is their best player, and they still managed to curtail the Martins and won quite comfortably, I thought, Peter.
They did. Well, they won by 5 points, and it was really early in the second half that they began to pull away. But St Martin's were the lowest scorers of the weekend. They scored 112 in total, and when you look at their forwards on paper, you'd be sort of wondering, how were they only able to score 112?
Yeah, well, the reason they were only able to score that was because of the hands. Some of the hands backs like Owen Ryan, Liam Shockman, Kenny Clooney, they're as good as defenders as in the county, and they have been for quite a while. Young Ryan is only 20 or 21, and Shockman is actually under 20. So.
And Finn O'Driscoll is back as well.
He's a very good player. Of course, he was very good 2 years ago, wasn't it? Against they got to the final against the Raps.
Yeah. And then obviously the other two games were in Wexford Park on Saturday evening, and it was the 2021 county champions Rapparees took on Rathnewer, and this was a bit of a one-sided affair.
Yeah, it was, Peter. The Raps that was definitely the performance of the weekend, But if you study it closely, they got 14 or 15 points from frees. That's too many frees to give away. Rathnewer got it from 14 points down back to 6 points down, and then gave away a free to stop the momentum. I just thought the Raps didn't have to bring on any subs, so that's an indication that the whole 15 have been playing well. I thought it was the team performance of the weekend. Now Kevin Foley ran the show, Anthony Larkin was outstanding. There was loads of others. Ricky Fox had a great first half as well.
From a Rathnewer point of view, things haven't been going as well as they have been used to in the last, you could nearly say the last 10 years really. I know more so in the last 5 years things haven't been quite as good for Rathnewer as they would have been in the past.
Yeah, Rathnewer is a powerhouse of the GA in Wexford, and they just haven't been producing inter-county hurlers for what reason I don't know, but I just look at their forwards, Sean and Kieran O'Connor, Rory Higgins, Jack Redmond. They're all very, very good forwards. Shane Lawler, James Tobin, I thought did quite well on Liam Ryan. He's a big man, good in the air and all. But Rathnewer forwards haven't clicked. Someday it will click for them, and they're going to put up a big score. But it hasn't been happening. But the relegation final last year, they showed how devastating they can be in the last 15 minutes of that game. They went from 4 points down to win by 6. So there's definitely potential there. There's no doubt about it.
Well, one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about Owlert and Crossbeg was, and the same probably applies to Rathnewer, some people would be looking at those teams as maybe more likely to be candidates that might be battling for the last spot to qualify, and maybe one of them might even end up in the dreaded relegation battle. I know it's difficult to predict at this stage, but it is the type of thing that wouldn't surprise a lot of people to see one of those maybe involved.
Yeah, but last year at the start of the year, would you have predicted that Rathnewer and Clabon had ended up in relegation? So this prediction game, especially with this championship, anything can happen. The way I look at this championship, Peter, I think there's about 4 teams that are not looking at relegation, but I think the other 8 teams are, struggling to get through, and they're fearing relegation first and foremost.
Well, naturally those, we'll say the 4, maybe 5 teams that you think that mightn't be in that battle, I know they could end up in there as well. Presumably then you might think that those would be the ones that be more likely to be getting their hands on the cup at the end of the day, and who are they?
Yeah, look, like the last 3 years, no one would have predicted who was going to win the championship. So with this championship, anything can happen, and if you get a run and a run of luck with no injuries, anything can happen. But on paper, Gorey look very strong, Raps look very strong, Martins look very strong, and the Anns look very strong, Ferns and the Shells look very strong. But the Shells didn't win last weekend, and they're out again this weekend, and if they don't win this weekend, they'll be under pressure. So anything can happen. The final game of course was the Shells and Fern St Aidan's. We didn't really expect anything other than a tight kind of a game, and that's the way it panned out. Yeah, and looking back on that game, Shells worked very hard at that game because they were down to 14 men after 20 minutes, and I thought the introduction of Arnie Murphy, I thought he was very good when he came on. He brought a lot of energy to him. Brian Malone was solid, Sean Keane Carroll was a constant threat, but Joe Kelly going off early was a big loss to the Shells.
Yeah, definitely, and they'll be obviously hoping to get a win against Rathnewer and steady things next weekend. The other thing that we would have talked about a little bit here last year was the format of the championship, and the club delegates for the county on the county board and all the officers and all the rest of it. The majority decided that we'll stick with the hurling first in a block and then go with the football. What are your thoughts?
I have to admit, Peter, and my feelings on this, I'm not a fan of it, and just a simple thing like last year Rory Higgins, Rory O'Connor, Cathal Dunbar were in the Wexford panel, and 3 of them got injured. Rory played 5 minutes for his club, the other 2 didn't play anything for their club, and I think it was down to, it was great servant to Wexford hurling. Kieran Kenny pulled a hamstring there a few weeks ago. Is there going to be hurling for Kieran this year? If the injury takes a while to get back, so I don't think it allows any chance for any player to get back. And if you're injury prone, you could go 3 years without a championship game.
And it's often in the early stages of the championship that those injuries do happen,
Yeah,
because you're going that extra little bit harder to the ball, or you're going whatever.
Yeah.
And do we have any examples of that from the weekend? I suppose we'll know better when the teams are named for the weekend. But
yeah, I just see Brian Quigley going off at half time, and seemingly he has a knee injury, so he didn't play last year either. So in 2 years he's looking like he's going to get a half an hour of hurling, which is not enough. And people will accuse me of being anti-football, but I think football is falling short as well. They're only getting 5 or 6 weeks, and the majority of the club players are out after 5 weeks. Is that enough to promote Wexford hurling or Wexford football for that matter? And I think it's a crazy system now myself, and players can't be enjoying it, because if you get an injury, you're gone for the championship, and that's a scary prospect for any player.
Well, there are a couple of other things as well. Like we were saying, the hurling and the football. If it was alternate weeks, the hurls and the footballs would be in the field from now until mid-September for every team.
Yeah, I think that's a much better scenario, Peter. I think it's much better.
And the other thing as well is, if you're a hurler and you're trying to organise maybe a holiday away with the children or whatever, you're going to have to miss a championship match. Whereas if you're in favour of one code or the other, you might be able to take your break on the week that code is being played or something. So there are practical things to take into account as well.
Yeah, the holiday is a different thing though, Peter. Everyone, this is 1 year, and last year was the same. The players know when they're going to be playing, so booking holidays in the middle of a championship, I just don't buy that now myself. But maybe I'm different, I don't know. Well, I was never on a holiday anyway, Peter, so
We might do a whip round and we'll send you away to Las Vegas or somewhere.
No, Bunclody or somewhere as far as I go,
Right, so we have the matches coming up again at the week. Oh, sorry, there's another thing actually that we forgot to mention that's a change from last year, and that's the change to the knockout stages. We would have had penalty shootouts in quarter-finals and semi-finals last year if they had been level after extra time, but a lot of people don't seem to be aware that the county board decision changed that this year. We'll have a replay during the week. So if a quarter final is a draw after extra time, there'll be a replay on the Tuesday night ahead of a semi-final, or a replay on a Tuesday night ahead of the final. That could have a big impact on the way things go, Ed.
Yeah, definitely, Peter. And that's one of the things I don't like about the format of the championship is our build-up now for a county final is talking about the semi-finals, and from experience, I've gone around the county and all, I think the 2 or 3 weeks lead up to a county final is what inspires youngsters, and we've seen so many examples of that. And just imagine a county semi-final going to extra time and then having a replay Tuesday night and having to play, so you're playing 3 big matches in 7 days.
Yeah, it's very possible that you'd have a...
But in saying that, I will say one thing, it's definitely a better spectacle than a penalty shootout. The Anns and the Martins penalty shootout last year, the players were so wore out they couldn't take a penalty.
It was a fairly poor standard of penalty shootout. But in the alternate weeks format, the chances are, if a semi-final was a draw, there'd be a better chance of those 2 clubs not being in the football or not being in the other code.
That's right.
And they'd have the following weekend that they could play it rather than having to shoehorn it into a Tuesday. But I think when people, if there is a draw in a semi-final and people realise there could be a county semi-final on a Sunday, on a Tuesday, and then the county final on the following Sunday, that they might realise that...
Yeah, that's a lot for a player, isn't it? It's an awful lot for a player, but
it's a huge advantage to the team that obviously gets straight to the final without having to replay naturally.
Oh, absolutely it would, but these are the problems with the current championship. But at the end of the day, as you did say, the clubs did vote for it, so there's nothing we can do now.
Yeah, and one other thing naturally enough that people will be looking at in any championship is the emergence of any potential inter-county talent. Now, we mightn't be able to say after one game in the championship, but there are a few guys that in the last season or two have shown themselves that they might be capable of making a step forward. You never really know, I suppose, until you're put into the purple and gold jersey on an inter-county day, but there are some players around now that might be given a chance in the early season.
Absolutely, Peter. You know, just two spring to mind. The two hands lads like Shockman and Owen Ryan definitely have the tools to play inter-county. And another player that really impressed me at the weekend was Paddy Casey from Aldgate. These are lads that have the, as we said, the tools to play at that high level, you know, but it's a big commitment now, inter-county hurling or inter-county football for that matter.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I suppose one of the key things, not to dwell too long on the inter-county game, but one of the key things that will be is that the lack of youth that are coming along that are guaranteeing their place on the Wexford team at the moment. There's still an awful lot of the guys around a year or two either side of the 30 age bracket that are still the really go-to men for the Wexford County team, aren't there?
Yeah, well, I think again this current format, you know, it's not going to allow you to spot that, because you know you're going week in, week out. So the days of a lad starting in April and by September he's a Keith Roster or Des Moyden or whoever, you know, that day seems to be gone, because you only have 5 weeks to get it right, and they won't take a chance on it, you know. I think we're stopping youth coming through now myself personally with the current format.
Well, the format is here to stay, and that means that we have a round 2 next week, and well, it's here to stay for this year anyway.
Yeah.
We have a round 2 next week. Fight Harriers against Gorey is going to be the first game. A point for the Harriers on the board and 2 points on the board for Gorey. What way do you see that one going?
Yeah, I think Gorey are favourites, but from a young age I always thought the Harriers were always very good in Belfield, but I'll go for Gorey, but beware of the Harriers.
I'm going to tip a draw here in this one. Sit very firmly on the fence. I think the Harriers might be able to up their game a little bit and challenge Gorey. The second game, it's on at the same time on Saturday, which is not ideal. I suppose there are a few different things on. We have Friday night, we have the we're just getting a bit of interference there. Friday night we have the Wexford GA race night, and then on Saturday I suppose the fixtures men are trying to avoid clashing with the inter-county games that are on. So there's a couple of senior matches clashing with each other on Saturday, and so clashing with the Harriers and Gorey is Crossabeg and the Raps.
Yeah, again I'd have to fancy the Raps, but as I said earlier, I was very, very impressed with Ballymorn's work rate, and they will try very, very hard.
One thing that Crossabeg sprung a major surprise last year in the football championship. I know it's a different code, but a lot of the same players, they went out and they hammered the Starlings.
Look, they're capable of winning the game. I know they are, you know, and they've done very well since they've got up to senior. And you know, you talk about, everyone is saying, but you talk about what do you need to be a good senior team. You need a good goalman, which they have. You need a top centre back, which they have, Paddy Foley. You need a top forward, which is Oisin Foley, and you need a very good free taker, which they have, Mark Byrne. So they have the potential to be a very, very good team.
The third game, Shelmaliers against Rathmuir. This game was quite close last year. I know it was a kind of a dead rubber for Rathmuir, but it was reasonably close, wasn't it?
There was nothing at stake. It's going to be interesting to see how both teams will react, because both teams lost last weekend, you know. I think the Shells will win it, but I don't think Rathmuir will be as bad as they were last Saturday now, you know. Yeah,
I think I didn't predict the Crossabeg Raps game, but I think they'd have to go with the Raps and the Shells for those two games. Ferns and Owler then?
I'd have to go with Ferns. I think they're very comfortable in their system, you know, and I think Sean Murphy's going to be a major loss for Owlert if he's out. He was having a whale of a game last Saturday evening, you know. He was brilliant, he was. Or Friday evening, I should say, sorry.
Great to see Gavin Bailey back in action after missing last year as well, of course, for Ferns. That increases their options.
Yeah, Gavin is a great lad, you know, and he came back on there last Sunday. I was delighted to see him, or Saturday was it? I was delighted to see him back on, you know. A real workhorse of a player, and he's had to put in a big effort to get himself back, you know.
Yeah, I'm going to have to tip Ferns to make his 2 wins from 2 as well. And then we have on Sunday evening we have St Anne's and Aldgate.
Yeah, that'll be a good one, you know, because Aldgate have probably defenders to match up with the St Anne's forwards. So, you know, Shane Rake will probably be on Liam McGovern. That'll be some duel, you know. and Damien Rick will probably be on Diarmuid O'Keefe if he's back. So I just think the Ans will win it, but Highgate did impress me for 30 minutes last Saturday, Peter.
I'm going to go against Jed, and I'm going to go for Highgate to spring a little bit of a surprise. I'd imagine St Anne's will probably be favourites, but I think there's a win or two in Highgate, and I think it could be one of them. And then the final game is a kind of a derby over the years and a hotly contested game. It's on Sunday night between St Martin's and Glyn.
Yeah, the last two times they've met, I think Glyn Bartown beat the Martins. But you know, and Glyn will be delighted with the draw the last year. They're missing so many from last year. But if you remember, Peter, we were at Glyn and Highgate in the league, and we both said that Glyn were very impressive. The young players, young Donoghue corner forward, we were impressed with Ger Dempsey and Conor Manny. I think he's out injured now, but I think the return of Fanning gives Glyn genuine hope in this game. But I'm going to go with the Martins. I think they won't be held to a low score like they were the last day. I think
I'm going to go for the Martins as well. But one thing with Glyn, by missing so many lads, it's given an opportunity for a lot of these younger
That's
guys
right.
to really get onto the team for a sustained period of time and stake their claim, because like they have a very good second team, and they have had for the last couple of seasons, but some of them might have found it difficult to break in against some of the more established lads maybe.
there's no doubt Glyn Bartown have talent. You know, they got to two minor finals in the 1 year. You know, so only a special group can do that. You know, and they definitely have a lot of talent in that club. And I'd say in a few years Glyn will be challenging for senior titles.
Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that one. One other thing, of course, is to try and encourage as many people as possible to get out and actually follow their clubs and watch the matches, Ed, because it's a great thing for a club player to go along to wherever they're playing and whatever grade they're playing in, and know that there's a crowd there to watch them and a crowd there to cheer when they do something good or whatever like that.
Yeah, as a player, there's nothing as nice as a big crowd at a match. You know, it's great, and you know it's good for supporters to get out and go to the match. You know, it's very good. I think hurling is the most entertaining game in the world, and you know, why wouldn't you go to see it?
Yeah, and we were, I suppose, talking mainly about the negative aspects of having all of the hurling championship throughout the summer, but one of the major positives is, of course, the weather.
Definitely, yeah.
The fact that it's going to be sunny for matches when people get out. We're laughing here because it's absolutely spilling rain around us now, but when people get out, when they're able to get out into the stands and go along to the match, knowing that we're not going to be watching lads sort of messing around in the slop and the muck, and have good conditions to play in.
Yeah, nothing beats being there, as the saying goes, Peter.
So we hope to see you there at the weekend at the 6 matches in the Pettitts Senior Hurling Championship.